I'm welcoming Bex Elder. Bex is a freelance translator, editor and copywriter, and she's one of the students who dared to set herself up directly after her graduation. Bex, the floor is all yours.
Hello, let me see if I can share this presentation. That's always a
Should
good
be able to,
test.
and we can hear you. Yep, we can see it. Perfect.
Lovely. Oh, it's all going brilliantly. I can't see you though, that's a shame. We'll continue on and I'll come back later. So I'm delighted to be back here. First of all, a little bit of context about me. Here's me looking very professional and like I might work in a creative field. And here's a picture of me on graduation, just in case you're at that point in the fourth year where you're not sure whether you'll ever get to that moment. I promise you that you will.
I think you
I
need,
graduated.
sorry, Bex, I think you need to highlight slide 2 because I want to see that picture. We still see slide 1.
Oh, that's weird. It's coming up for me.
It's
shading the
there we go.
page rather than the presentation.
Yeah. I think
Is it best to keep it like this?
yes, it's working and it's lovely to see
Wonderful.
you in your graduation going again.
I know. I genuinely thought I wasn't going to get there at points, but I promise you it will happen. And so maybe for you, that was in 2017 for me. And just before that, I was sitting there thinking, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life. And maybe that's where you are right now. And I was actually sitting at this day when I realized that there was a whole bunch of people who were making a career out of translation, which happened to be my favorite class, and that this was actually a viable career option. Hopefully you're a bit quicker on the uptake than I am, as it took me about 4 years of studying to realize that that was an option. And so I came towards the end of my studies and I basically identified I wanted to work with languages. I wanted to be involved in that directly rather than project managing. And ideally, I wanted to be back in Aberdeen and near my family. And so the obvious solution felt like giving freelance life a go. And I thought that everyone was going to tell me it was an awful idea. And I was surprised when people were actually super positive about it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that today. But before I do, I would love to hear from you. So you can either scan this QR code with your phone if you're very high tech, or you can go to slido.com and enter the number 5254419. So I'll give you a few minutes to navigate there. And when you get there, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. I'm going to say, how do you feel about life after university? And how likely do you think it is that you're going to pursue a career in translation or interpreting? So hopefully a bunch of you are there. So how do you feel about life after university? Pop this up for now.
I love the interactive nature of a presentation.
Can't help myself. Nervous, scared, confused, absolutely. Hopeful, positive, anxious, excited. It feels like a jungle, clueless, stressed but excited. Yeah, I'm sure we can all relate to some of those feelings. There's definitely a lot of anxiety in the room. So hopefully after today, you'll be feeling a little bit less anxious. And then question number 2, how likely do you think it is that you're going to pursue, oh, I don't think you'll see that. How likely is it that you're going to pursue a career in interpreting or translation? Oh, wow, a whole bunch of people think it's super likely. Some people not sure, quite likely. Great. Well, hopefully this will help give you a little bit more guidance about one of the options. So back in 2017, I graduated and I set up straight away. And honestly, in those initial few months, I really didn't know what I was doing. So I started to take some steps to establishing a business. For me, practically, that looks like taking up taking out a startup business loan. This is a government supported scheme that basically means it's a set interest rate you pay back. And that allowed me to buy things like a new laptop, things like Trados, that's the CAP tool I use, which is a computer assisted translation tool, as I'm sure you all know. And it also allowed me to pay like my ITI membership and that kind of thing. I registered as a sole trader with HMRC because I'm based in the UK, and I opted for sole trader because it's a little bit less complicated, and unless you are making kind of over £80,000, you don't need to worry about things like that. And I also did the ITI, which is the Institute of Translating and Interpreting. It's the official body in the UK's starting up as a freelance translator course. And I'll give you access to these slides, and those are all links that you can check out and find out a little bit more about those specific things. At the same time, I cobbled together a website on Squarespace. I made a CV. I started to get active on LinkedIn. And a lot of my time was just writing lots and lots of emails and applying to lots of agencies. I would say probably for every 100 emails that I sent, I maybe got a response from about 5. And so it was lots of kind of plugging away and just starting to get going. I also, at the time, pretty much accepted any work I thought I might be vaguely capable of doing. That's changed a little bit over time, and I'll explain that a little bit more. But really, if I thought, oh, I could research this, I took it on. And I also started to make connections with other people in the industry. So some of that was through ITI. Some of that was through Twitter. There's quite a big translation community there, or there certainly was at the time. Increasingly now, I would say LinkedIn is a brilliant place to be if you are a new translator. And if you search the hashtag LI translators, you'll find a lot of conversation there. I initially also tutored part-time to help fund and provide some kind of regular work. I worked with a company called Explore Learning. And so that's kind of the embryos of what is now my business. Now things are a little bit different, and they're a little bit more structured, but actually those general principles in the first couple of months of running a business, of marketing myself, of contacting people, of doing paid work, of networking still apply. They just look a little bit different. So one thing that I've done over time is I've identified the jobs that I enjoy and the jobs that I don't. So for me, I love things that are a bit more creative. I love to work on marketing text. I love to work on travel and tourism. If it's like a small business that's kind of in a creative field, like a gift shop, that is my absolute dream client. But to be honest, I only figured that out by working out what I didn't like. So I am not your person for technical or legal or medical translation. I also learned to identify what it was that I did particularly well in and what it was that actually clients loved about working with me. And what I noticed was when I asked people for feedback or I asked people for testimonials, they really enjoyed the fact that I have a bit of a flair with the English language, that I could create connection with the people reading it, that I could put emotion into it, and that really I could speak to their target audience. And so as a result, I also started to pursue some work in copywriting, which is basically just writing in English. So that could be someone's website or newsletters, basically anything that you read in English. So that's kind of a little bit about that transition and kind of figuring out where that fits. I'm going to go relatively quickly so that there's lots of time for questions. These are just some of the tools that I've now used and really recommend. They're not essential from day one to have them all, but I use LSP Expert as a project management software, and that just helps me keep a track of all the kind of deadlines I have. I use Perfectit, which is an editing tool, and it's basically a slightly fancier spell check, and it helps spot things like inconsistencies or that kind of thing. In 2020 maybe, or 2021, I sat my ITI exam. So you need to be working for 3 years before you can do that. But that basically allows me to be a qualified member, and it's almost a mark of like, I've been assessed by an external body and they have said that I can do my job. And I also use this jazzy wee remarkable tablet, which is basically a tablet designed for handwriting. And it's really, really useful for things like editing, because you can circle things on the screen. And again, there's links to these. This is just some of the stuff that I've found helpful. So what does a day look like? It looks like all sorts of things, and perhaps you are surprised at the percentage of some of these things. So one thing I incorporate into every day is exercise, whether that's running or going to the gym or just going out for a walk. I find that really helpful for my own mental health, to keep that in check and to have some time outside. But also it's remarkably good thinking time. Often when I'm kind of going for a walk, I'll think of the perfect solution that I couldn't think of earlier. I make sure I spend time every day engaging with people on social media. That's really important because it's building community, it's building professional connections, and also you never know when someone's going to refer a job to you just because you've had a wee chat with them. There's time spent on admin. That could be things like sending emails, setting up jobs in like LSP Expert and in Trados. It could be doing invoices, marketing, so that could be approaching potential clients. It could be making content. It could be writing a blog. There's planning, so every day I spend a little bit of time looking ahead. What do I need to prioritize the next day? And then there's paid work. And to be honest, that paid work percentage is in an ideal day, assuming that there is that much paid work that day. As you may guess, with freelancing, there's lots of ups and downs. And so that percentage can really vary depending on how busy it is. Within a week, you'll see some other things coming in here. I spend time on my own business. So actually, what is it that I love doing? What would I like to be doing more of? How do I get there? Because the joy is that you can make a business that works for you. I spend time every week on CPD, which is continuous professional development. And again, that can be a range of things. I'm in a revision club with a couple of translators. So once a month, we revise each other's work. And that's a really helpful way to learn, particularly in a profession where you don't get loads of feedback. I have recently completed a copywriting course to improve that skill. It could also be things like running a business better, or how do I improve my marketing? It can be all sorts of things. And then in a month, again, you'll see the paid work percentage has gone down a little bit more as you throw in more things. So again, that's the business development. This blue one, which doesn't have a label, is meetings. So sometimes I would meet with a client normally over a video call to talk about their project, particularly if it's copywriting, kind of what tone of voice do they want to strike? How do they want to communicate to their customers? What is it that they're really hoping to do? Because the more that I can understand about them, the more I can create something that's going to fulfill those goals. And then the final strand is kind of content creation. So planning, I use Instagram a lot because that's where a lot of my ideal clients would be. But also thinking about, what do I want to post on LinkedIn? Sometimes it's more planned than others, but it definitely takes a bit of time to create that content. So what are the best bits about my job? For me, the perks are that I get to work with clients I love. That's definitely been trial and error. But the joy is that you can figure out exactly what it is. You can look for more clients like them, and that actually over time you can also say goodbye politely to maybe people who don't fit in that sphere that you want to be in as well. I have control over my business and the decision-making process. Sometimes that's amazing, and when things are going well, you think, wow, I made all these decisions and I made this happen. Sometimes when things are harder, it feels like, oh my goodness, it's just me. How on earth am I going to solve this? But in general, I love having that creative control and the freedom to try new things. I love having flexible hours. Sometimes that can mean late nights, but actually over time, I've learned to be stricter with myself. I've learned to say no to projects that aren't right for me in order to build kind of a work day and a work week that works well. And for me, the absolute best thing is when you find the perfect words that just absolutely nail that sentiment or that idea, and that you can portray that really succinctly and clearly. The less good bits of being freelance would be that if you don't work, you don't get paid. And for me, I've really, I had a episode of depression and anxiety. And so that sense of not knowing whether I would get paid, how much I would work, was really difficult to manage initially. Over time, I've learned to kind of put systems and safety guards in place. So for instance, every amount of money that comes in, I would set aside a percentage for tax, a percentage for my pension, a percentage for kind of business expenses, and a percentage for profit. And I'd also try and pay myself the same amount every month. So if it's been a great month, some money stays in the bank. If it's been a less good month, then you can then withdraw and bring that down into your day-to-day spending. Another challenge is that there's constantly more things that you could do. There's always things you could improve. There's new ideas to explore. That's really exciting, but sometimes it's a little bit hard to switch off from that. And another challenge is that you can be working alone a lot. And so it's really, or for me at least, it's been really important to build community both locally, but in the kind of profession as well, so that you have people who you can chat to, or you can run things past, that kind of thing. So my 3 top tips, if you are thinking about going freelance, is number 1, ask for help. You would be surprised at how many people would love to help you, and how many people, if you drop them a wee message, would be happy to chat things through with you. Still now, when I see someone doing something brilliantly that I would love to learn, I will drop them a wee message and just say, hey, could you talk to me a little bit about that? And 99% of the time, people are really happy to help. The second bit of advice is to keep going. As I said, initially, it's a big numbers game, and it's sending out lots of applications. It's getting rejected a bunch of times. But it's only through kind of sheer, I think, determination and stubbornness that I have got to a point where things are a little bit more established. And even then, sometimes these days I want to give up, and you just have to keep going and push through that. And then the third thing is to find a system that works for you. So there are so many different ways you can run a business. And I think it's really helpful to not just take someone's model, but to try different things and find out what works for you. Initially, when I started working, I felt really guilty if I wasn't doing a kind of 9 to 5, because that's what most of my friends who were employed were doing. And yeah, I could achieve just as much or sometimes more in a day than other people, just depending on what works. I also know for me, realistically, 4 hours of kind of paid work is the most I'm going to do in a day, and be super, super productive and effective. So as far as possible, I try not to have really busy work days, or else I just find my brain starts to shut down a little bit. So that is some top tips from me. If you would like to find out more about me, I'm going to hand over to questions in a minute, but you can scan this wee QR code. And what that'll do is take you to this lovely page, which has a whole bunch of links that you might find helpful. So it's got the links to these slides. It's got links to my website and how you can contact me, and my Instagram and LinkedIn. And you are so welcome to contact me through any or all of those ways, if you have really specific questions you would like to chat through as well. But for now, I am going to hand back and see if there are any questions I can answer at the moment.
Thank you very much. That was brilliant, as always. We do have a question, and I think that's one that will be prying on the mind of people interested in freelancing but concerned with the uncertainty. You mentioned that you did go through a spell where you had mental health issues, and so how did you continue working as a translator while experiencing health problems?
Yeah, that's such a good question. For me, my most acute period of being unwell was actually between my second and third year of university. So I took a year out at that point, and that allowed me to get a bunch of building blocks in place that helped me. So things like being on the right medication for me, having time to talk through some of that stuff. And so there were kind of some healthy habits in place that helped with that. But sometimes it's as simple as reaching out to someone and going for a coffee. I find building in exercise a really helpful part of just keeping my head in check. And to be honest, sometimes I've weighed up and thought, gosh, is this the right job for my mental health? And I think even just having that check of, is this what I want to do? Yes, okay, I'm going to keep going, or actually I'm going to hit pause on this or do something else.
Super, thank you very much. I would like to encourage everyone to have a look at your LinkedIn page. It's really nicely done, and there's a lot of interesting content on that, and I think that will be quite inspiring. We've got time for one last question, and if you've got a couple of minutes, for those who have more questions, would you mind maybe answering them on the chat? We've got several questions coming up. Actually, we'll take one from Neve. How important is the number of languages you have for translating? Are you in a better position with 3 languages than with 2?
Great question. I thought when I left university, that I would pick up another language, and actually I really haven't needed it. I mostly work French to English with a little bit of Spanish to English as well. And I think it just depends on where you position yourself in terms of, realistically, you're probably going to start broad, but as you niche down and you find the area you want to work in, actually the more specialised you are, the more that's going to serve your clients. And so that doesn't necessarily have to be in terms of offering lots of languages. I think, yeah, some people would offer 3, but I can't think of anyone I know who would offer more than 3 languages. A lot of people work with 2, and a lot of people work with 1 as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.